cold air nipped at my nose as I adjusted my heavy pack, a stark reminder of the encroaching winter. Most would consider it madness to camp in the forest at this time of year, but the allure of solitude and the untouched beauty of nature in its rawest form were irresistible. As an experienced outdoorsman, I had ventured into the wilderness countless times, but nothing could have prepared me for the chilling mystery I was about to encounter. The early morning fog hung thick, with beams of sunlight fighting their way through the dense canopy above. The forest emitted a symphony of sounds, with birds calling out and the occasional rustle of leaves beneath unseen paws. By noon, I had ventured deeper than most would dare, into a part of the forest rarely trodden by man. But as I navigated my way through the underbrush, a peculiar smell wafted through the air, an odd mix of smoke and burnt food. I followed the scent until it led me to a clearing where an unsettling scene greeted me. A campsite lay in disarray. Tents, 2 of them, were hastily pitched, with their flaps torn and stakes barely holding them to the ground. A smoldering campfire sat in the center, surrounded by logs with half-cooked meals laid out. There were plates with food, a pot of soup that had tipped over, and utensils scattered about as though dropped in a hurry. The wind carried the scent of the smoldering wood, combined with the unpleasant aroma of rotting food. A few garments hung from nearby trees, still damp, as if someone had tried to dry them out after a sudden downpour. What struck me as most alarming was the eerie stillness of the scene. There were no sounds of life, no laughter, no murmurs, no crackling of firewood, just a heavy, unsettling silence. I approached cautiously, my senses heightened. The remnants of the campfire told a story. It hadn't been abandoned for long. The logs were still warm, the ash fresh. In one of the tents, I discovered a journal. Its pages, hurriedly written in, contained entries detailing a group of friends' venture into the woods, their excitement, the routes they'd taken, their shared stories around the campfire. The latest entry was dated the same day and read, "Something's watching us. We can all feel it. Daniel says it's just the wind, but it feels malevolent." Unease settled heavily in my chest. A nagging thought persisted. Where were the campers? As I continued my exploration, I noted more signs of a hasty departure. A lantern lay shattered, its oil seeping into the ground, and a map was pinned to a tree with a route clearly marked. Taking a deep breath, I decided to call out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" My voice echoed back at me, but no response came. The silence was thick, oppressive. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but curiosity held me firm. The forest, which had earlier felt alive and inviting, now seemed foreboding. The shadows cast by the towering trees seemed darker, deeper. I felt watched, though I saw no one. With every step I took, the feeling grew stronger. An inexplicable dread gnawed at my gut, urging me to flee, but I had to know what had happened. As evening approached, the temperature dropped. The chilling breeze carried murmurs from the depths of the forest. Resolute, I decided to camp there for the night, hoping to come across some clue, or perhaps even meet the campers upon their return. The night was restless. Noises echoed around, faint whispers, distant footsteps, the snap of a twig. Each sound made my heart race. Hours felt like days. I remember dozing off for what felt like mere minutes when a blood-curdling scream jolted me awake. It was close, almost at the edge of the campsite. I grabbed my torch and ventured out, the beam of light cutting through the thick blackness. I found nothing, no one, just the remnants of the campsite and the ever-present feeling of being watched. Forest transformed. It was as if the sinister aura from the night before had been a mere illusion. But the abandoned campsite, the journal's last entry, and the haunting scream were all too real. I made my way out of the forest, my pace brisk. The mystery of the missing campers weighed heavily on my mind. Who were they? What had they seen? And more importantly, what had seen them? The local townsfolk spoke in hushed tones about the forest being haunted. They told tales of spirits and creatures that resided deep within, guarding the land. They spoke of travelers who'd ventured in, never to return. The more I listened, the more I realized my discovery wasn't unique. Many had stumbled upon similar scenes, campsites left in haste, but no one had ever found the campers. Back in the safety of my home, the chilling memories of that trip plagued my dreams. And one question remained, a haunting echo that refused to subside. Were the campers truly gone? Or had they merely become a part of the forest, forever lost to its mysteries? The truth remains unknown, but when the wind howls on a cold, moonless night and the trees sway in a ghostly dance, I often find myself wondering if they're out there, trying to tell their story. And if I listen closely enough, sometimes I swear I can hear their distant screams. It all started innocently enough. I'd been mapping uncharted territories for the better part of a decade, and I was no stranger to the vast wilderness that lay before me. Every new land held its own mysteries, its own secrets, and I had grown accustomed to the feeling of being a lone traveler in a land unknown. But this place, this forest, it was different. As I entered its depths, the canopy overhead was thick and dark, with just the faintest dapples of sunlight filtering through. Birds called from high above, and the distant rustling of leaves hinted at creatures hidden from view. I took a moment, filling my lungs with the moist, earthy aroma that the woods offered. The first few days were rather uneventful. I followed a river that meandered its way through the heart of the forest. Each evening, as the shadows grew longer and the sun dipped behind the trees, I'd set up camp. My routine was always the same: pitch the tent, light a campfire, and then jot down the day's discoveries in my leather-bound journal. But it was on the fourth night that things took a strange turn. Just as I was about to drift into sleep, a faint noise pricked my ears. It sounded like a twig snapping underfoot. I dismissed it as a curious animal and pulled my blanket tighter. But as the minutes ticked by, I felt an inexplicable sensation, like someone was watching me. I sat up and scanned the area around my campfire, but saw nothing. I tried to shake off the unease and convince myself it was just my imagination. However, the feeling persisted. Every night thereafter, as the fire crackled and the forest sang its lullaby, I felt a presence lurking at the edges of my campfire's glow. And every time I'd look, I'd catch fleeting glimpses of a shadowy figure standing just beyond the light's reach. Its form was indistinct, like a wisp of smoke, but the feeling it exuded was undeniable: malevolence. Over the next few days, this presence became more pronounced. Whispers echoed through the trees during the day, always too faint to discern but loud enough to make my skin crawl. My maps started to look unfamiliar, as if the forest itself was shifting and changing its layout just to confound me. One evening, after a particularly long day of exploration, I found an old moss-covered stone circle in a clearing. The stones were tall and weathered, arranged in a perfect circle. The ground inside was bare, save for a single twisted tree in its center. Its branches were gnarled and leafless, and they seemed to stretch out towards me, beckoning. Curiosity piqued. I decided to camp there for the night. As the firelight danced upon the ancient stones, the forest's whispers grew louder, more insistent. That night, the shadowy figure appeared earlier than usual, circling the stone perimeter. Though I couldn't see its eyes, I felt them, piercing, hungry, and full of ill intent. Desperate for answers, I decided to confront this entity. Mustering all my courage, I stepped out of the protective circle of stones and approached it. The forest fell silent, even the fire seemed to dim in anticipation. "I know you're there," I called out, my voice trembling. "What do you want?" The entity didn't respond verbally, but instead began to move closer, inching its way into the light. As it did, the formless shadow began to solidify. What I saw made my blood run cold. It was a man, or at least something that once resembled one. His skin was ash gray, and his eyes, oh, those eyes, they were pure white, devoid of pupils or irises. They bore into mine with an intensity that rooted me to the spot. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the clearing, extinguishing the fire and plunging us into darkness. Panic welled up inside me. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my ears, the wind whipping through the trees, sounding like the very screams of the damned. I don't know how long I ran, or in which direction, but when dawn broke, I found myself on the edge of the forest, my tent and belongings long left behind. Gasping for breath, I took one last look at the dark expanse behind me. The feeling of being watched had vanished, but the memory of those white eyes would haunt me forever. To this day, I've never returned to that forest. No map could ever capture the dread that place held, nor could any story truly convey the terror I felt. But I write this as a warning. There are places in this world that remain untouched for a reason. And if you ever find yourself feeling watched in the wilderness, leave immediately, for you might not be as lucky as I was to escape the watcher in the woods. Well, dear friend, do you also have seen something strange while camping? Perhaps you've felt the unsettling sensation of being watched or heard whispers that sent chills down your spine. We want to hear about it. Share your own terrifying camping experiences in the comments below. Your story might just be the stuff of nightmares that others can relate to. If you enjoyed these spine-tingling tales of real horror based on true events, please give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling adventures into the unknown. Your support keeps us bringing you more stories that will make you question what's lurking in the shadows the next time you set up camp. Now don't go just yet. Click on the video on your screen for another horror adventure that will leave you sleeping with the lights on. But remember, no matter where you are, always be aware of your surroundings, for you never know what might be watching from the woods. Until next time, happy camping, if you dare.